Hi, Kevin Henry, the Group Editorial Director for UBM Medica's Dental Division, and I'm on a Google Hangout today with Dr. Marc Cooper, who is the founder of the Mastery Company and also one of the preeminent voices out there when it comes to the way that group practices are changing how dentistry is done. So, Dr. Cooper, thank you so much for taking a few minutes today to chat with us.
I am happy to do that, and I thank you for the time that you're giving me.
Absolutely. And one of the things that you have done to really kind of help people understand the wave of group practice a little bit more is that you've actually created your own conference for this called the Summit. And I would love for you just to kind of give our viewers a little bit of a taste of how it's grown and changed over the years and what you're going to be focusing on this year with it.
Great question. This is our fifth summit. So we have some experience at generating a conference, and we understand the amount of intense work that needs to go in to make it all happen. So each of the conferences, we have premier speakers that are in the industry. I facilitate, but I don't do much. We have really strong people that come who have a background of success in particular areas. The first 2 and 3 summits were really about what is group practice in the form of a MSO and a DSO. So the first 3 were about more education and information about how these things are designed, how they work, how they're constructed, and so that the dental community could really understand what is a group practice when it's generated as a DSO and MSO, although now it's much more sophisticated because this thing is moving so rapidly. And then the last one we saw, what was really needed is that we had basically 3 groups of people, 3 groups of dentists. How do I get from 1 to 5 in terms of locations? And then how do I get from 5 to 10? And how do I get from 10 to 20? And because each one of those stages requires a different leadership, management, and financing. So we addressed that in the last summit. And as I talk to my clients and I see what their issues are, there's 2 that come up repeatedly. One is, how do I capitalize this future besides going into my own pocket and buy my own debt? And there's a thing called equity partner and venture capitalists. And most people are unfamiliar with how to address that, how to write a memorandum, what is the influence that they have if they come in, how does the money work. So on day 2 of the summit, we're going to look at capitalizing the future. And then on day 1, what you're going to find, at least what I'm finding, is dentists who get to 3, 5 practices are pretty strong in their leadership, but it's hierarchical, it's command and control, it's here's how I would like it done, here's what I want it done by. But at that mark of about 3 to 5, you need to start incorporating non-dental professionals, such as an operating officer or CFO or HR. And you can bring them in on a part-time basis, but the operating officer you certainly need to have on a full-time basis. And you can't lead them or manage them like you did your dental staff. You have to generate a level of partnership and work by influence and accountability, whereas in a dental practice, you can use command and control. So day 1 is about corporate leadership. The speakers we have on both days have been there and done that. We have Steve Bilt, who's done lots of practices and actually sold his company and now gets back in the game. We have Steve Thorne from Pacific. We have very strong speakers. We have Andrew Mata from North American Dental Alliance, who used to be another name. I started with Andrew when he had 2 locations. He's now at 90. So I have gone through the metamorphosis with him. And then on day 2, we have an equity partner, we have a bank, and we have a venture capitalist, as well as Sulman, who has who started with 1 practice, is now at 40, and he's now dealt with equity partners. He's going to talk about what it was like for him to go through that process. So the summit is focused on those 2 areas, and concurrently the market has changed. So when I started, there weren't nearly the same level of group practice interest or as number of group practices that are here now.
And let's talk a little bit about that market change that you've seen. I know you were just at the AADGP meeting in Las Vegas, and you kind of walked away from there, hearing some stats and seeing some things that once again has reinforced that this is kind of the direction dentistry is going, correct?
Yeah, I want, to be really clear. If you look at all the other industries in healthcare, if you look at physicians, pharmacy, optical, veterinary, they all ended up in a group dynamic. And I don't know why dentistry considers itself different. The economics are now pushing for groups to form because it takes a lot to run a practice. I mean, it's expensive. And doing it solo with the increase in the technologies that you have to purchase, and I don't know a staff that doesn't ask for a raise, and I don't know an owner who doesn't want to raise the rent. And so the margins are going this way. If you look at the statistics, the patient spending per visit is down. Dentist revenues are down or flat. The wait time, I used to wait 11 days if you were a new patient to get into a practice. Now it's 5. So capacity is increasing. The surveys done about are you busy enough is, 40% of solo practices says, no, I'm not busy enough. The trend is pretty clear for me. Now I know that there are different levels of resistance to hearing this message, and I'm okay with that. The mature practices, the ones that have been doing it for 20 to 25 years, this won't affect me. The ones that are in the middle, not the baby boomers, but the Generation Xers, it is going to affect them. And then if you look at the millennials, they don't want to own a practice. They owe too much money to school. They want a good job. They want to have a life. They don't want to get into buy $1.2 million practice and owe $800,000 for their education because it'd be $12,000 a month that they can't afford. So the trending is obvious to me. The economics, the way insurance companies are getting it, what they're doing, the level of understanding of employers, the relationship to the systemic disease. Recent article demonstrated that 3 chronic diseases, you cut the costs by almost 60% if they get their teeth cleaned. Well, those medical insurance companies are going to, I think, embed dental insurance so that they can have a continuation of care and reduce the costs for these chronic diseases. So these trends are happening, and dentists are not isolated. They're not sequestered. They're part of an entire system. So I think from my viewpoint, and of course I could be wrong, the future is yet to happen, and anything is possible, but it seems obvious to me where it is going.
Well, you and I have talked for years now about this, and it's really been something that you've kind of been that prophet in the wilderness talking about it, and yet it seems like that a lot of things we talked about years ago are now really coming to fruition when it comes to group praxis. And
I could have gotten paid for it. Being a futurist does not have a tremendous value until it happens. Jobs, fortunately, had a company behind him that he could see a future and make it happen. Given our industry, even though I've been talking about it for 5-6 years about it's coming, the future is coming at you point blank, you can take advantage of the situation by shifting how you think about delivery of care. This is all doable, but dentists are fairly conservative species, and they like it what they've got, and they think they have control. They think they'll lose autonomy and control and a voice if they belong to a group. But if they have a ownership of a group, where they generate a group themselves, then it can be their own expression in a different way. And that's up to them, not up to me.
And I know whenever you and I were talking before we started the interview, you threw out a pretty interesting statistic that you'd heard from the ADA about the percentages of solo versus group and kind of how some things were trending. I was wondering if you might share that with our audience.
Well, first of all, the Health Resource Institute does a brilliant job as part of the ADA. Marco does incredible research, and if you don't go there and look at his stuff, you're missing some very important data. And he reports, and my other surveys and my other readings support it, that right now, in the landscape of dentistry, less than 55% of the practices are solo. And they're decreasing at 7% per year. The per patient spending, the PERC is flatter down across the board. The per capita spending compared to the GDP is down across the board. The wait times that used to be 11 days for a new patient are now 5 days for a new patient. So capacity is increasing. And a recent report by those guys showed that the "I'm not busy enough" reported by solo practices was at about 40%. And the final statistic, which has been reported, is their revenues are down, their expenses are up. So that means because they're owners, their personal income is going downward as well. So it's not as lucrative to be a dentist as it has been in the past. When I talk to dentists about the ADA, what they say is they don't do anything for me, and their membership is always in question and sometimes contracting. I think they're doing a great job. I don't think they can stop the influence of what's occurring from the external world of economics and venture capitalists and equity partners and hospitals and insurance companies. The industry is a $3 trillion industry. That's 12 zeros. The dental industry is a $125 billion industry, which is 9 zeros. So there's a difference. If I count to 1 billion in seconds, it takes me 31 years. If I count to 1 trillion in seconds, it takes me 30,000 years. That's the difference between 1 trillion and 1 billion. And we have a lot of practices that do 1 million, and that's only 6 zeros. And if I count to 1 million in seconds, it takes me 12 days. So you can see the influence of 3 trillion on this person doing $1 million. It's a significant amount of external influence that's going to occur to alter this, to be able to be in alignment with the rest of the system. That's going to occur. How many cell phone companies do you know about? Or how many airlines do you know about? I mean, everything goes through consolidation when the economies of scale are required to generate a business. And so group shall be. And the ADA, as we're getting back to, has fabulous numbers. I mean, you can't, they do wonderful work. Let me just validate that.
Well, as always, I appreciate your time. And I was wondering if you might just give people your website if they want to learn more about the Mastery Company or about the summit coming up, and how they can be a part of that.
I appreciate that. So if you go to www.masterycompany.com, you will have access to all our particular posted programs that we do. But in addition, if I could suggest you go to our multimedia section, we have audios, we have videos, we have blogs, all focusing, well, nearly all focusing on managed group practice, how they operate, what works, what doesn't work, and where the future is going.
Dr. Cooper, as always, it's a revelation whenever we get to talk. Thank you so much for your time. I truly appreciate it, as well as your insight.
I appreciate you asking me. Thank you, Kevin. Take care.